All right, take care.
See ya. Bye-bye.
All right,
Hope it wasn't too
next guest is already ready here in the bullpen. Bring him in. It's Marc Kulak. Marc, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing, Marc? Good.
Marc, good to see you,
Good
man.
to see you too.
We've talked to you a few different times on the show. It's nice to have you right here in person.
In person, yeah. They let me across the border.
That's pretty nice too, huh?
Yeah.
So they didn't look at your background or anything when you tried to get in?
It was very easy. I think the U.S. border guy,
Yeah.
he must have been a fisherman too. I said, I'm going to the fishing show. He's like, next.
Next,
Nice.
yep.
So, yeah.
Next guy. Cool. We wanted to bring you in today. I mean, obviously, we had Doug here from Fish USA there.
Yep.
You got some stuff going on too, projectsalmon.ca. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So, for some people know, some people don't know. Like obviously I fish out of Toronto right now, but I lived in Vancouver, British Columbia for a few years. And, when I lived out there, I was amazed that I could go, forget even the tackle store, I can go to a hardware store and I'd see a wall of salmon gear, like as big as you can imagine. And then I moved back to Toronto and honestly, I was disappointed. I couldn't find the stuff I wanted as a fisherman. Very, very peaky when it came to tackle and stock. And so I started probably back in 2015 doing a lot of custom tackle for mainly charter captains, mainly tournament guys. And then over time, it just became something. And it became something to the point where I couldn't keep up through Facebook message and those types of pieces. So in February, actually, it's basically 1 year next weekend, I launched projectsalmon.ca, which really it's my tackle line where I started out doing, call it custom painted flashers, in a few different types, an 8-inch fin flasher. I've also got the 10-inch hot fish, which is a Canadian flasher in a fish shape, but 10-inch with a little bit more of an aggressive action. And then from there, really got into the bait heads, and just recently brought out, I've got divers, I've got anchovy heads, and really starting to build out into, I call it the Canadian salmon angler's dream, where you can really go A to Z, almost everything you need. So anchovy heads, beads, terminal tackle, a one-stop shop. I love the Fish USA site, but it's we get this border in the way. We got exchange rates and those types of things. So trying to really build something for the Canadians. What's been interesting though, for those that may not know, the Canadian dollar is actually really weak right now. So I'm actually finding I'm doing a lot of sales to the United States because. It's a good price. The U.S. dollar is worth $1.40 Canadian right now. So it's funny how it works out. Yeah, I'm doing lots of Canadian sales, but I'm actually shipping quite a lot across the border. But that's really where Project Salmon started. The other thing though is it was about trying to make sure they had patterns that worked, right? So the patterns I sell are the patterns I'll run on my charter boat. They're the patterns that other captains are using. The patterns that the tournament guys are buying. I don't want to have 300, 400 different SKUs that sit there. It's about having, 50, 60 patterns that, frankly, I can have complete confidence in and will feel and stand behind. So, yeah, that's what Project Salmon's all about.
Very cool. How do you come up with this stuff, Marc? I know you're fishing. That's going to be your answer. I fish them. But, so does that mean a bunch of them end up on the scrap heap? I mean, you got to be a guy that's going to go out and just try different things. How does that work? How does that development process work?
So yeah, some of them don't work, and the good news is they don't end up on the scrap heap. You pull the tape off and you start over.
Okay.
When you've got all the machinery and the paint to do that. I think the one thing I try to do, and with a lot of my tackle that I'm making for people, I try to make sure it's something that I believe can, call it last the day. So if someone goes to my website, they'll notice a lot of my patterns. They've got UV and they've got glow. So I try to go for the best of both worlds. I like to argue maybe it's I have a hard time making decisions. So I want something that works throughout the day. But that's a big part of what I try to do. But yeah, it is a lot of trial and error. I think like many of us, we love the color green. So that's a great color on Lake Ontario. But from there, really trying to mix and match and see what works. A lot of variations too. So I may have a pattern I love, and then I'll do it in black, then I'll do it in green, and then I'll bring an orange one together. And that's some of the things I think I've learned over the years from fishing on Lake Ontario, but also when I fished out west. It's the same fish. So we're very infatuated with green on Lake Ontario. So are the guys out on the west coast. But we were using a lot more orange, a lot more pink to catch Chinook or kings out there. So starting to bring some of those colors in, and they work.
Do you make your friends order a minimum quantity when they come up and say, hey, can you do this for me, Marc? I want a little of this, I want a little of this. And so is it like no onesies? You need
no
six,
onesies.
tell me what you
I can't.
tell
So
them.
you know when I do the, so it's interesting.
They might be telling me that something too.
It's interesting. So when I do the custom stuff now, that's not on my website. Typically, it's like half a dozen, or or preferably a dozen, because it takes time. I can't be cutting tapes and painting ones and twos, let alone trying to mix the clear coat and such. But that's to answer your question. That's also part of the developmental process, right? When you're working with all this network, and they know, like, if Pete asked me for something custom for Pete, I'm not going to sell it to everybody, but over time you might take something you learned on this flasher and this flasher, and you blend it together, right? So yeah, I typically do 6+ when I do the custom. But the other thing I find I do a lot of, so I know on the Canadian side we love the White Lightning. That is a staple paddle for us on the Canadian side. I'll take the White Lightning and I'll then blend that with like a UV Super Frog. So now you've got the UV Frog on one side, you got the White Lightning on the other side. So that's a lot of what I've been doing with call it Project Salmon. It's a bit of a mashup, right? Where I take two patterns and bring them together and put them into one.
And what do you see when you use that, take it out? Do you feel like you really do have the best of both worlds, or is it like one of those things where you take like a steak and you put peanut butter on it?
That's just wrong.
It doesn't really work. So
yeah, I'm dead against putting peanut butter on a steak. So I would never do that to salmon tackle either. Right. So no, not everything's going to work, right? Sometimes you look at something and say, is it truly better? You got to let the fish decide. The other joke, and some tackle manufacturers might not like me saying this, but before you catch the fish, you got to catch the angler, right? And that's the colors, right? That's the patterns. But yeah, there's absolutely some patterns that just may not work, or someone doesn't have confidence in, right? Like I think about a good buddy of mine back home. He's got this one spoon. I think it's a Sexy Veggie spoon, it's called. He swears by that spoon. He catches all kinds of great kings. I have never caught a fish in that spoon, no matter how many times I put it out.
That goes back to the question about the spoons and how they could change, and this whole kind of dynamic of, I have flashers on my boat that, Casey or somebody will swear by it, and, I got the same fly behind it. I got the same gig going on, and I'm like, this thing sucks, okay? I just can't. It just doesn't work for me. And then, like, why spoons get hot and why they're not sometimes is another, we're not really sure. It's good that we don't know.
Yeah.
It's actually probably good, right? It keeps it a little bit of a mystery, the whole thing. And then why Chris can catch them on that and why I can't.
Well, even last year's stud pattern may be a complete dud next year.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's good for tackle people, though.
Yeah.
Right? You got to keep creating new things, maybe.
Yeah.
So how was your fishing on the North Shore last year? Would you rate it on average?
When it was really good, it was amazing. When it wasn't, it wasn't.
It was
bad. I would honestly, I had a great season from a charter perspective. Very fortunate. I work with a bunch of great captains out of the Bluffers Marina. You know it well, Pete. You've been there many times. Work with great captains. We stay on fish. Plus, I've got a father who's retired and fishes every day for fun. So if I'm not in the water, someone's feeding me intel. Every day I'm looking at what's the wind's doing, what the temps are doing. We stayed on it. It was good. I'd say I feel like 2022 was a smaller year for us from a fish size perspective.
Yes. Same here.
But, when I say it was good, like, 35, 40 fish, 5-hour trips. But then what we noticed,
great,
that was amazing.
That's actually great. Yeah.
But then when it was bad, it was because, typically it's, and you use these words a lot, it's the ice cold death water. That wasn't last year. Last year was the soup.
Yeah,
last year it was so warm. Like there was probably 2-3 weeks where, like, if you weren't going to put your riggers down below 120 and your diver and, clip on mag divers with extra weight and a 400 or 500 copper, you weren't going to catch fish.
Yeah, that's
right.
Tough. That makes it tough.
And that's tough, especially, when you're running a charter boat, you're trying to get a nice spread out there and you're stuck with maybe a 6-rod spread because otherwise it's tangle fest. Yeah. Right. So that was, we went through a lot of that last year. I'd say, for the recreational guys, I think it was tough because I know there's a few guys I helped out last year. They didn't have a mag diver in their box. It was like, here, take this. Your standard diver is just not going to get deep enough. So we had that for about 3 weeks last year. For some reason, the last 2 years, we've got a big tournament. The tournament, the King of Kings in the summer. terrible fishing, absolutely terrible fishing. But that separates the men from the boys. You got fun fish. I think the challenge has been when you've got the tough fishing, you've got a big tournament, but you're also running charters. You're then going out to the blue zone trying to pick up the steelhead or rainbows, the cohos for the customers. You're not necessarily getting the intel you need for tournaments. So that was a bit of a catch-22. You want to be able to work, but you want the intel for your tournament, and that's where you kind of pick one. But overall, it was a great season. Huge co-host. So that was nice. For me, when I'm taking customers out, there's nothing better if I'm going out deeper and picking up 14, 15 pound cohos on a spoon. That's a lot of fun. They're not fighting a ton of gear. So yeah, it was an okay season. I'd say I consider it a good season because I think I was on the water so much with a great network.
But the average guy,
it was tough.
Had a tough year.
It was a really tough season
for the most part too. The average guy, the weekend guy or the guy that comes up twice a month, really wasn't dialed in. No. So it's a huge disadvantage. For them. And
it is, and it's funny. When I first started, every time I do and I think you do something similar. Every time I do a trip, I do a fishing report at the end of the day, and it's my way of almost keeping my own personal log, but I do it through YouTube. And when I first started, guys would give me a bit of grief, and I said, come on, we've all been there. I'm trying to help these guys out that are recreational fishermen, and I said, you never know when, even as a charter guy, I'm having a hard time. But the rec guy that I've helped out is actually hitting them hard, and he's gonna send me a text, and that happens.
Yeah, there's a difference between a fishing report that becomes a brag report. Right. I got my 12 and I'm done at 9:30, and there's no information.
No.
Right? Versus I got my 12 at 9:30, and this is what we use. It's kind of, maybe not exactly the word, but they were on this today for us, and I think maybe it is a little bit of brag report because you want to know that separates you from the rest, which is okay. You earned it. But it's not a total brag report. But as long as you can throw those guys some bones, I think forget about what the other people say.
Yeah, no, and now it's cool. I can tell you, the guys we talk. Everyone's cool about it, and it's helping people out because I think it's good for the fish.
Yeah, you have a lot of good videos and information on your stuff. I see it. So
I think it's actually really good to hear that fishing report and to hear from you and what you did when it's a grind.
Yeah.
I mean, when you go out there and you're banging them up in 2 or 3 hours, I mean, I don't want to say anybody, but a lot of people can go out and catch them when it's like that. So tell me how you're catching them when it's tough. And that's, I think, what people really want to know because, a really good rec angler can go out there when the bite is just smoking hot. Yeah. They're going to do great. But what they want to know is what to do when things are tough.
Yeah, I think the biggest tip I've shared with guys is when we think about Toronto, we got this section called the Drop. It's a huge drop off where it goes from, call it 60, 80 feet to 150 in a snap of the fingers. So guys love to troll that. When it's on, it's on. When it's off, it's dead water. And so I think the one thing I've probably helped a lot of guys with is actually getting over the fear of turning their boat south and actually trolling out. Mm-hmm. And, trolling out and, not powering up. It's just turning that boat and trolling out and running your spread because you can often pick up kings in 250 and 300 and then just keep working it out. And then they start getting into coho and steelhead. And I think that is, I know there's more guys that message me off saying, I would have worked there with my boat. What kind of day to evolve myself? That piece, I think back to when I had my 7-foot aluminum, I would never go out there because I was scared, thinking it was something crazy out there. It's just water. Yeah. It's just water.
A little deeper.
Yeah, just a little deeper. Away, but as I say to them, make sure you tell someone you're going out there, have your radio on, have your cell phone, and go enjoy because you can actually find fish. Because who wants to keep going back and forth in the same water and not have anything going on? So I'd say that's the one thing. The other thing. It's, guys will start out fishing and first thing in the morning, sun up when, you almost can't do anything wrong. And then they want to leave that spread out throughout the day. I personally believe that's when, this fish gets spookier and I start putting my gear away from the boat, right? So, I run a lot of slide divers. I want the gear away from the boat. Even if, we've got a much stricter rod limit on the Canadian side, it's 2 per person. If I've only got, 2 people plus myself, so I'm stuck to 6 rod to get a boat. That's not the tips I would share. It's more that day go on, it's productive until I start getting into the evening shift.
Yeah. One of the other things that you have to contend with is out of Bluffers. I mean, it's Toronto. I mean, it's a busy port. There's a lot of traffic, especially if you think you're going to go out and run a 500 or something like that. Like, it's tough. There's a lot of traffic. So how do you navigate that, especially when we start talking about, all these wreck anglers are out there on the weekend, and it gets busy out there. And that's a challenge that maybe people don't face so much, like in a place like Wilson or Olcott, that you're facing every day out of Toronto.
And then you have the Armada sailboats to contend with.
I was waiting for that. Yeah.
But there is a lot of sailboats on those days.
I'm not gonna lie. Some days it's you pull your hair out. I'd say honestly so we've got the major highway in Toronto is called the 401 highway. I joke like it's worse than that highway in rush hour on a weekend on this section of water. So you've both nailed it. We have to adapt. So like, honestly, if I'm running a charter on a Saturday morning, Sunday morning, or even after Saturday or Sunday afternoon, I'll start out on that drop early morning, but I'm running a light spread. I'm running 4 or 5 rods. I'm trying to get those nice big kings early, get those hits. While I can, I'm fighting with boats getting pushed around. It is what it is. Yep. You get a decent box. You got some nice kings. I'll start to push out into deeper water. There's still fish in the deeper water, or I'll push into shallower water. Typically, I like to go deeper, and then if worst case, I get the customer a mixed bag, and they're happy. But last year, anyone on social media would probably on the Canadian side would know that last year was a bit of a gong show with the amount of charter boats and big boats that were losing gear, boats cutting in behind, and even wreck anglers having boats cut in behind. No one wants to lose gear. You get a copper or weighted steel cut off. There's $150 gone like that, right? And the time to put it together.
It just disrupts your whole day. Like the mojo goes, everybody gets mad. It just ruins the day when you have these events that happen.
And especially when you got customers on the boat.
The whole thing just is like, you just want to quit. You just want to go in. You're just like, it's a day changer, really.
I know you're absolutely right, Pete. Like I remember for years, it used to be like, put your big boards out, kind of blocks. That doesn't work. Don't. Like, so for me, when it's busy, I run the ninja boards, right? Because I whip them in and out super quick. Right. I can let them out wider. I need to bring them in because the boat's really close. I can bring them within 5-6 feet of the boat. So
that's a good idea.
It's adjusting to the day. Would I rather run my Big John Otter boats every day of the week? But that doesn't work on the weekend. Right. So yeah.
Well, thanks, Marc, for stopping by. If people want to know more about you, I've got your website for your charter up there. It's kingslandingsportfishing.com. Pete talked about too. You have an awesome YouTube channel. You really go through and just do a lot of hey, let me show you how this product works. And you really get into the kind of the nitty gritty and how things work. You do your reports on there as well. So if people that are up in the Toronto area want to know what's going on that water, they get it all the time. But then you've got your product we talked about right at the beginning as well. Yep. And that's going to be projectsalmon.ca.
Absolutely. And I'd say, before COVID, used to get lots of Americans come spend a week or two on the Canadian side and fish the Canadian water. I highly, Pete, you've done it many times. Yep. Highly recommend it. It's a great fishery. Yep. Come across the lake. It's pretty easy to do, either by boat or by car. It's a cool fishery.
Yeah, we hope to come back and see you this summer.
Yeah, I hope so.
Now that's COVID things behind us and all that.
Definitely.
So we hope to come over.
Time to compete.
Marc, appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Marc, good seeing you.
See you later, Pete.
Okay.
All right, we got a new guest coming in here. It's Bill Schweitzer. Before we get that, though, let's try to hit a couple of questions that are kind of more directed towards you, Pete. Here's one from Ed Steinmetz. Ed says, when you're running double divers, when do you run a regular size high diver and a mag on the inside versus when do you run a mag on the outside and a mag on inside diver?
Hi, Ed. Normally, I'd say 98% of the time we're running our mags on the inside always and our regular size divers on the outsides. Of course, we vary them with settings and distance, but I've only ran 4 mag divers at once, only a few times, and that's when we really just had like ultra deep fishing, and you had to get down. So don't like to do it. Don't have to do it too often, but usually I'm regulars on the outside, mags lower on my insides, probing depth. But I like that setup a lot. Once those fish get down, I'd say 80 feet and deeper, at least some of them, we start doing mags. And the mag divers really create a really good separation in the water too, because they pull a lot harder, go deeper, versus 4 regular side divers, which sometimes you get tangles and things like that. It really helps to avoid tangles running those mags. And it's an underutilized tool, I think, in the Great Lakes. There's guys pulling those inside mag divers.
Yeah, you want to keep them on your inside so that when you pick up a fish, you're not getting tangled up. You got that, that spoon up.
They don't come up underneath your outsides typically.
All right, let's bring in Bill. Come on. How you doing today, sir?
Hey, gentlemen.
Thanks for
How's it
coming on
going?
the show. Really
Thanks
appreciate
very
it.
much.
Pete Alex.
Bill Schweitzer.
Bill.
So, Bill, you work for New York Canals.
I work for New York Canals, the director of marketing, and we run the New York State Canal System and the 57 locks that make it up. It's funny, I've been listening to all the big lake talk, though. I used to have a trolling boat on Lake Champlain, and I want to talk about the canals, but boy, I miss big lake trolling. It's pretty great. I mean, a little different than the Great Lakes, but it's the same thing, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
But if I mention Lake Champlain, I might as well stay there. I'll give you like maybe 2 minutes on what the canal system is, and then I'll talk about our fishing program that affects Lake Ontario and a little bit of Lake Erie.
Yeah,
sound good?
Yeah, you. So Bill just gave a speech on this, and again, we're at the Greater Niagara Fishing and Outdoor Expo. And we've got seminar rooms connected, and you guys are just doing seminars. Pete's done seminars. You do like everybody in this building basically has been doing seminars. So it's a great show if you want to learn stuff. So Bill, why don't you go ahead and just give us kind of an overview?
Yeah, really good. I mean, we're one of, I think, 220 seminars they're doing, but we also have a booth right over here. But our main job is the Canal Corporation runs the Erie Canal and the New York State Canal System. It's 500 miles of inland waterway. Connects to Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. Like the old song, it's Albany to Buffalo, and it's still running. There's the Champlain Canal that's 65 miles long that connects the Hudson River to Lake Champlain, and the Erie goes all the way to Buffalo. But you can go out to Ontario through the Oswego Canal. And then also, not too many people know this, there's a 4-lock canal called the Cayuga Seneca that connects the 2 largest Finger Lakes, and really great trolling there, landlocked salmon, lake trout. And so anyway, we're connected to Finger Lakes too, and all of that makes up 524 miles. It's a heck of a lot of work to keep it open, but 200 years ago, it made this state what it was, made New York State the Empire State. And nowadays it's more recreation, a lot of fishing, tour boats. And we also maintain the old towpath where the mules pulled the barges is now a multi-use trail. It's a part of the Empire State Trail, but it's a canalway trail, and we run that too. So that's basically the canal system. And but I'm here at the fishing show to talk about what we do with the Ontario Lake tributaries. For years and years, we've really only been concentrated on navigation. I mean, we run the canal, and our nearly 200-year-old infrastructure is, it's hard to manipulate. But we put a program together called Reimagine the Canals, and it was kind of like thinking outside the box. What else can we do with the canal? And so we are doing these regulated or more careful releases of our water in the western part of the Erie Canal, and in Niagara, Orleans, and Monroe County, Sandy Creek, Oak Orchard, Johnson Creek, and 18 Mile Creek. We're releasing water in them to keep the base flows going, and we're actually extending the season, and we can mimic a rain event and get them salmon to come in a little earlier.
Can you explain that a little bit better?
Yeah.
The release of the water.
Yeah. So the Erie Canal drains into the Lake Ontario, the north flowing Lake Ontario tributaries, right? And normally we just pulled the plug and drained it when navigation season was over. It was the Erie Canal. Right.
You literally pull a plug on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I call it pull the plug.
Drop it down to a certain level.
Right. So we, when our season's over late in the fall, we drain the canal to do a little winter maintenance. We have to fix up the locks. All the infrastructure on the canal is over 100 years old. It was the canal opened in 1918, so we're well over 100 years. But what we started to do was the waste weirs or the gates where we drain it. It's not really a plug; it's a gate that will drain it. We started talking. We got a lot of feedback from the public, and if we're a little more careful and we did a little manipulation to the infrastructure, we can release the water when they need water. So if there's low, it's been a drought in that late fall, we can give them a little needed water. And then during the season, when the salmon and the brown trout and the steelhead are coming in, we can just maintain their flow so there's a good amount of high water. So you don't have to, the fishermen coming from, Ohio, Pennsylvania, or wherever, they don't have a guess and hope that they get good water. We can maintain a really good elevated flow. And then new this year, when we drain the canal, like I said, we're doing it in a kind of a sustained longer period. So it's not this big rush of water. We actually let it fill up again and we drained it again. So we extended the season for about 2 to 3 weeks in late November, early December.
So you take it down from what to what was used? When you say lower, basically you're going from 12 foot to 4 foot, or I know it varies.
Yeah, no. So we get the water in the Western Canal. The western section of the Erie Canal is from the Niagara River, actually. So we maintain 12 feet of depth for the boats for navigation so that they know they have 12 feet of draft. And it probably goes down to about 2 or 3 or 4 feet.
That low.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then it doesn't matter for us. In the winter, nobody's on the water anyway. What matters is how we drain it for those Ontario tributaries.
So what tributaries does it affect?
So the ones we're doing now, and we're looking to expand it, we're kind of going slow and learning our lesson. We got a lot of help from DEC and other partners. The guides in the area, Oak Orchard, Tackle and Lodge, Ron Bierstein really got us really good feedback. Yeah. But it's Oak Orchard Creek, Sandy Creek, Johnson Creek, and 18 Mile Creek.
Okay.
Those 4 tributaries are getting extra water from the Erie Canal, bolstered flows.
So you could basically mimic a rainstorm and suck those fish into the system.
Absolutely.
When it's time.
Absolutely, yeah. And if it's a sustained rain event, we can actually hold some water back.
Because I knew they did that at the Salmon River too.
Yeah.
Like they were able to control that flow. It's getting antsy. We've had some drought.
Yeah.
They can control that and get some water moving to get those fish up, and so the anglers can access those fish. Right?
I mean, it starts really with the habitat, the giving them this extra water and maintaining like an elevated flow just makes the fish can come further up the stream. And like you said, if it's low water, we can kind of entice them salmon to come in because we're giving them the water. And it keeps them in there longer, right? So more fish, better fishing conditions, hopefully we're helping out the fishery as well as helping out the fishermen. That's the plan. One more thing we're doing too, it's called the ACE program. It's Access and Conservation Easements. We started giving all these tributaries of water. We thought we were, the hero, and everybody said, yeah, it's really great for the water, but there's not a lot of public access. So we're kind of the PFR program that DEC does. It's similar to that, and DEC is helping us. We put aside $1.25 million for the next 10 years, and we are purchasing land easements from shoreside landowners and for easements. DEC will control the easements, but we're trying to get a little more public access for fishermen.
That's exactly what our Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission does in Pennsylvania. They use the Lake Erie permit dollars that are generated primarily from fishing Lake Erie and tributaries only, and there's millions of dollars in that. So they go around, and it's all tributaries, and they try and coax the owners into either signing an easement or purchasing their property because they want anglers to have access to all these fish they're stocking because the land restrictions. So good.
It has entered the fishing business.
Sounds
right?
like it.
We started giving good water. Yeah. I mean, we got great feedback that we were making progress and the water was great. But then everybody said, hey, what's the real problem around here? So we worked out with DEC. I mean, they're a fellow state agency with us, but there's only so much an agency can do. So we're following their lead, and we got a little extra money, and it's helping the areas up there. And it's just an easement. It's still the people's properties.
So we'll just use 18 Mile for an example. Yep. So, lately we've been having these bluebird late summer, Octobers. So is the DEC involved with the timing of you letting the water out as far as do they even look at the forecast? We're going to get rid of basically warm water.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
No, really good question. So there was so much more than just, I'm talking about the results of the program, right? But there was a lot went into it. A lot. We had a task force. We had local guides, DEC, scientists, and all give us feedback.
with
Sure.
We did through Brockport, the SUNY Brockport. We did creel studies, and we also, take the temperature of the water. Like none of the, we're not going to put warm water in there and cook the fish, like you said. So there's a lot to go into it before we do a release.
That's an interesting side because, I stream fish myself, and you don't think about that part, right? But you guys are thinking about it, right? There's a method to madness, and you got all this planning and when to pull the plug and why. And here you got the anglers just like, there's a run at 18 Mile, let's go. But all this behind the scenes stuff is
it's
going
interesting
on.
because
it's not natural. In Pennsylvania, we don't have the pull the plug thing, and we have great steelhead fishing, but no one pulls the plug to ignite or run. We wait on God to say,
right,
let the rains come and the temperatures fall, and then let the fish run. Where these guys are kind of playing that to some extent, right?
And we're learning too. It's really, we get great feedback from the fishermen, the public, the tackle shop owners, and that. Some of them are just like, "Where's our water?" And then others say, "Hey, I saw some cloudy water today. Does that mean you're draining the canal now?" We have a website that's dedicated to just the release program, and so we have them on a schedule, and you can go to the website and check it out and kind of follow when we're going to do the releases.
Where's that posted at?
So it's on the Canal Corporation website, which is canals.newyork.gov, and there's a little button on there that says Fall Fishing Program, and that's where you can find that out.
It'll give you the dates you're tentatively going to release that water.
And
so you can almost plan your fishing trip.
You can plan your fishing trip like that, And if you can't plan,
I was going to see maybe he was going to angle you for some secret information.
We cover up the mics like
I thought it was. I was wondering, what are we going to talk about? Canals or
Well, the thing is that was part of the program. Like, first of all, it's for the fish, right? Yeah. But the other thing is that being a fisherman, I did the same thing. I'm from the Saratoga area, right? I'd have to drive out to Pulaski or Oswego, but you're hoping you get a good flow, What we're trying to do is a little more predictability where anglers don't have to guess.
It's a busted trip, obviously, if that doesn't happen.
And Mother Nature's not always cooperating when, it was raining like crazy last fall, so we had to hold back a little bit. When they need the water, we have it for them, and then at the end of the season, we get to extend the season for a few more weeks because we drain it nice and slow.
Are these low water levels that we have now, like Ontario, really impact any of this because it's all south of it?
So yes and no. So that it does affect us because the canal system is made up of 7 rivers and 5 lakes. So there's a lot of water and a lot of water flow in different ways, and it's a lot of water management. So any difference or Mother Nature or events really affects what we have to do, and it's a constant game or battle, if you will, to run the canal system.
So you talked about working with the DEC on this, and for those of you maybe from the Midwest, DEC in New York is essentially what we would call the DNR. So that's basically what it is. But who else? Are there other partners involved? Maybe some nonprofits or anything like that you're working with on this project?
So really good question. So we just started to kind of reach out to those groups, Trout Unlimited and that. And one, kind of educating what we're trying to do, and then also saying, hey, what else can we do, or how can we do it better, or give us the feedback. More feedback we get, the better we can tweak the system. And there's more tributaries out there we can affect. I mean, the canal system isn't going anywhere. It's 200 years old, great for recreation. Commercial shipping still goes on it. But I look at it as like another utility for the canal, that this 200-year-old infrastructure is actually affecting modern day businesses, right? And helping the fishing today, right? So, but it's DEC, it's the local public, and we're just starting to get into those groups, the local Trout Unlimited's, the statewide group, to get more feedback and get the word out what we're doing, and to get, they'll know more of the landowners than we will. I mean, we got a big job just running the canal, and even though we got the money set aside for the ACE program, I think Trout Unlimited and those type of groups are going to help us get the word out that, hey, you got a little piece of land, and can you help us out?
Yeah. So go ahead, Pete.
I'm curious, how many vessels navigated the Erie Canal like last year?
So we do a traffic report and our lock tenders. I mean, there's 57 locks on the system. There's 35 on the Erie Canal. So I can look in our system and see how many just came to the Erie Canal. I think there were just up over 70,000 lockings last year. That's how many times the gates open on our locks. So
that's per lock.
Well, yeah, that's all the locks combined, right? So every time the lock opens, we count that as a locking, right? So you could have one fisherman going back and forth in between a couple locks, account for a lot of them. But so we don't know the boat count on there, but it's pretty darn busy. There's never you're never really gonna have to wait too long to get in or out of a lock, but it's an interesting system because you'll go for stretches where you don't need a lock. There's no elevation change, and then you'll go where there are 2 or 3 locks to get up over a hill or get down a hill. So it's hard to say how many boats go through.
What's the cost to go through the Erie Canal?
Yeah, so the canal system is free.
Okay.
We used to have tolls years ago, but we're run by the New York Power Authority now. That has 3 hydroelectric power plants on the system. And we found out when we took the tolls off, boating spiked a little bit. So we are it's free. It's on demand, and you can you'll open the lock for just one kayak, or several boats, or any boat up to 300 feet. All our locks are 300 feet long and 45 feet wide.
Okay.
And it's lock is, if you've never been through a lock, it's Leonardo da Vinci's invention, 500-year-old technology. It's all gravity, no pumps or hydraulics. Boat comes in, we pull the plug and lower them down, or we take the water from the higher elevation and it fills up from the bottom, and it's an elevator for boats.
I've only gone through the Welland Canal, but
same,
several times.
Yep, same. So now that lock is what it's maybe 3-4 times the size of our locks, but it's the same principle. It's gravity.
Same way.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. They're impressive. Like if you go through the Welland Canal, I mean, there's a lot of water.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, when they drain the plug, there's a lot of water coming in there.
Our locks are they're 300 feet long and 45 feet wide. So every 10 feet is 1 million gallons of water. So if we have like in Lockport, New York, the first lock you'll hit from Lake Erie, it's a 220-foot lock. So that's 5 million of water to put you through. But again, it's water from Niagara River, and we're just putting it back in the canal. It's efficient.
So we're talking about a system that's 200 years old. You guys just started this fishing program recently. Where do you see the future of the canal system in New York? Where's it going?
So I know you're in a good business. So it's a great question. So we're actually coming up on the canal, the Erie Canal's bicentennial. It opened in 1825, and it's been running continuously ever since, right? So the World Canals Conference is coming to Buffalo in 2025. And we'll have kind of that world stage to kind of show off and talk about our birthday and talk about all the history. But really, we're kind of looking forward on what we can do. What the fishing program is a really good example of how we're using the old infrastructure for something new. And that's where we're going. It connects Lake Champlain and the Hudson River and the Atlantic Ocean to the Great Lakes, right? Water's a pretty darn good resource. So we're looking, sustainable practices, hydroelectric power. There's 27 hydroelectric power plants on the canal system. And so we're really looking forward. I'm a marketing guy, so I don't really know everything that we're doing. I just talk about the successes. But our program, Reimagine the Canals, and our partners are really looking forward to the next 100 years. And I see it as, big on recreation. The tourism just grows on the canal system all over. It's such a different system. The Champlain Canal and the Southern Adirondacks is so much different than the Mohawk Valley, which is so much different than the Western Canal out in this area, right? So there's a lot of possibilities for it.
Very good. Bill, appreciate you coming on. Was there something you wanted to talk about that we didn't ask you?
So I wanted to say, so is it Wisconsin? Are you from Wisconsin?
I'm from Wisconsin, that's correct.
So, it's funny, when I took this job, I never, what does Wisconsin have to do with the canal, right? But years ago, iron ore and products from Wisconsin came down through the Great Lakes and came out through. We'd see boats now from Wisconsin still on the system that are doing the Great Loop. And it's pretty cool. We're connected with Wisconsin. I'm from Albany, New York, and I work on the Erie Canal. Like, what would be our connection to that? But the Great Lakes are there, and we're part of them. So I'm glad to be on your show, and thanks for letting me talk about our programs.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. It was really interesting. Yeah. And I told Pete, I'm like, this guy's talking about tributaries. I know that was going to kind of scratch his itch. He likes talking about the trips.
Well, it's like, boy, we're going to have to work for some questions here, but it was great, actually. This was very informative.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And I tell you, and it's the opposite for me. I want to go back to Lake
You're
Champlain and
probably
start trolling
I'll
again.
say this stuff all day, but repetitive. This is old news, but it was good news. So what's your biggest salmon? I got to ask you one fishing question. What's the biggest king salmon you caught in Lake Ontario or in a tributary?
So
No fish stories.
Okay? Actually, the biggest salmon I ever caught was out of Oswego River.
Okay.
I mean, Lake Ontario still, but geez, and it's going back a few years. But I remember I had green line on. I had the fluorescent line because my eyes were bad.
Probably.
And I was walking back with that fish, and I had another one on, and I could hear, there's that guy with the green line again. Everybody hated me, but it was a big king. I mean, it's maybe 30 pounds or something like that. But we were hitting everything that day. It was on one of those days where the light switch went on and everybody's got it on. But that was probably my best day on the river. But yeah. Thanks for asking that. I'm glad I got that. Really good to meet you guys. Thanks so much.
Take care. So Pete, you showed up here a couple hours ago and you had 3 or 4 pages of notes over there. I can guarantee you didn't get through half of it. So we're about to wrap up. Is there something that you wanted to talk about before we let this thing go?
Not really. I guess for whoever's listening, come out. If it's too late for this year, come out to this show next year. It's a really good show. It's probably one of the best fishing shows in North America. Maybe you get around a lot. Definitely a lot of education, a lot of manufacture, a lot of it's a really great fishing event. So if you're listening and you're not going to catch it in 23, definitely come visit us up next year in 2024 to this Niagara Expo fishing show. Yeah. Really, it's a great show.
It's an awesome show. I appreciate you coming over and hanging out with us for a couple hours today. It was fun. I knew right off the bat with the Prisco thing that was going to go off the rails, and I was just going to be along for the ride on that one. But the rest of the show was awesome. Appreciate you coming on and kind of helping out. And like I was telling Vince Griglione earlier today, it's just nice having a different perspective, different set of eyes, and just different questions that you're going to come up with and I'm going to come up with. So it was good having you with us and looking forward to having you on again tomorrow. We got Trevor's going to be back tomorrow afternoon, and we'll have Casey tomorrow night, so it should be fun. Yeah. Appreciate everybody watching. Appreciate everybody listening. We'll see you tomorrow. Another 4 hours of shows tomorrow from the Greater Niagara Fishing and Outdoor Expo. We'll see you then.
Thanks, Chris.